93. This is Amon Asha Renew from AshaRenew.com. Today I'm going to speak about why the tarot is more than fortune telling. Let's turn this down a bit. See, when it comes to the tarot, most of the time when we are introduced to the tarot or utilize the tarot, it's for the purposes of fortune telling, to see what's going on, let's just say in your life or in the world, to, get some type of analysis about a certain situation that may be occurring. However, when we look at the tarot as 78 equations, because it is 78 cards in a tarot deck, when we look at these 78 cards as 78 dimensions or 78 equations that we are able to access, that essentially tells the full story of reality. So you can say within the tarot, within the book of Thoth, it's the entirety of reality. And that's why it is called the tarot, or the wheel of life, the entirety of it all. So essentially, at any given moment, every one of us is going through one of these 78 equations. So when people activate the tarot and they pull a card or several cards, essentially what they're doing is looking at the equations at play in a current situation or whatever it is that they are accessing or, requesting. However, when we add astrology or the mathematics to the tarot, we utilize it in a whole different fashion. Let me give you an example of what I mean. For example, the Seven of Wands, okay? The Seven of Wands has its own meaning outside of astrology, right? So the Seven of Wands, essentially, its meaning can be based on whichever deck you are utilizing, right? Because each tarot deck has different imagery, and each tarot deck may even have a different meaning for that imagery. However, what brings the tarot together is the mathematics or the astrology, because it gives us the equation of any given tarot card. So in this particular example, we use the Seven of Wands. Astrologically, the Seven of Wands would be, you can say, Leo in the third decan. When Leo is in the third decan, Leo is being influenced by Mars. So, irregardless of whichever tarot deck you have and whatever imagery may be presented on that deck and whatever definition that they give about that imagery, we can be certain that every Seven of Wands essentially represents Leo in the third decan, okay? Now, that is essentially the equation. So the equation, once we add the astrology gives us the equations. So now the Seven of Wands isn't just whatever the imagery is or whatever the definition is. Now we have a equation. We have a mathematical equation we can ponder on that then goes beyond the card. And what I mean by it goes beyond the card, because we have a combination of a planet and a zodiac. So the zodiac is Leo and the planet is Mars. And we know they have their own individual essence. So essentially, if we stick within the realm of the tarot, the Leo card will be represented as strength or lust. And Mars will be represented as the Tower, right? Or war. So essentially, we have a combination of lust and war, right? So whatever definition the author decides to put to that particular equation, that's will be how they define it. But now that we are aware of the equation itself, we can come to our own conclusions. We are not limited to the definition of our particular deck. We're able to utilize our own divination ability to come to wider conclusions, right? So an example of coming to wider conclusions would be this. Using the same example of the Seven of Wands, again, we understand that the tarot is an each one of our charts. So if we take it to natal charts, so we understand astrology represents 360 degrees of a circle. And we also utilize the tarot as 78 degrees of a particular circle or a wheel. The Seven of Wands appears in everyone's chart, because essentially the whole tarot is within everyone's chart. All these 78 dimensions is within everyone's natal chart. It just appears in different dimensions or different realms based on the particular alignments. So essentially the Seven of Wands can be in one person's 10th house, another person's first house, a different person's third house. Wherever it manifests will be different. However, when we can apply our own divination ability to what that means, so even if we don't have a tarot deck in front of us, we can still translate. See, the most important part of it all is translation, because you don't necessarily even need a tarot deck in front of you once you can translate what the degrees are. So utilizing the same example, the Seven of Wands. The Seven of Wands would be the degrees, 21 degrees Leo to 29 degrees Leo. So between the degrees of, because each zodiac sign is 30 degrees, between 0 and 29. So it's not 1 to 30, it's 0 to 29. So the degrees of 21 to 29 represents the third decan of Leo. So you see, the astrology allows us to get more complex and more mathematical in our analysis so that we can come to more further conclusions. So now we then went from the Seven of Wands to Leo and Mars to degrees of 21 degrees Leo to 29 degrees Leo, right? So now we have all these dimensions that have opened up that allows us to get further analysis, because again, this appears in everyone's chart. So essentially, once you realize or once you become aware of where these energies manifest in your particular chart, this gives you more awareness of what's going on in your life, because you see where the energies are located or where the tarot cards are located in your natal chart. And once you can order the tarot within the natal chart or within the mathematics of astrology, there is essentially no need to fortune tell. And this essentially is the point that I'm getting at. So for example, because I said in the beginning, you will utilize the tarot completely different once you add the further dimensions to it, which is essentially the degrees of astrology. So in the beginning, I said, if somebody wanted further analysis as to what's going on in their situation or any given situation, they would essentially, shuffle a tarot deck and draw a card or several cards, right? So, and based on whatever card comes up, then they will begin to break down what that card may mean. Once we have added all these extra degrees to astrology or the tarot, we add the astrology to the tarot. Now, for example, if the Seven of Wands came up, we can identify it in our chart. And once we can identify it in our chart, we have a better understanding as to why this card came up in the first place, instead of trying to figure it out of thin air. Basically trying to figure out what it may mean, we can identify exactly where this energy manifests in our lives. And essentially, once you can identify the position that that particular energy is in, you can understand, okay, because it's based on this position, this card comes up to point me in this direction. So we don't have to guess anymore. So you essentially go directly to where these points come up. So if you draw 3 cards, for example, that's 3 points in your chart that you go to. So you immediately go to the 3 points as to where these energies are located. So you would see exactly how this is influencing you. And you can do the same thing with the transits, or basically the current alignments of the planets. So not only can you do it with your own chart, you can do it with the transits. So essentially the tarot becomes more mathematical. It essentially gives more analysis to the points of your chart or any given chart, because essentially there is a natal chart for anything. Any person, place, or thing essentially has a natal chart. And again, all the alignments are different, but once you can pinpoint the alignments, the tarot becomes a book of thought, a book of illustrations that help you understand better your chart. So for people who may not speak the astrological language, who may not know astrology in depth, the tarot allows you to give or the tarot allows you to get a visual presentation of these complex ideas and allows you to come to your own conclusion. So even if you don't have, okay, this means this means that, the sun means this, Uranus means this, even if you don't have all that laid down, the tarot allows you to focus on geometrical imagery, because they may put angels in the cards, they may put demons in the cards, they may put, deities, from different traditions. Every tarot deck is different. So they are essentially trying to convey the same idea. They're just using different imagery to help you understand the more mathematical components. So essentially, you can take any tarot deck and lay out the tarot deck in accordance to where it is in your particular chart, to the point where there's no need to shuffle a deck and draw cards anymore, because it's just based on, where every card is in your chart. So you know how to tap into every energy directly because you have identified its position. There is no more guessing. There is no need to try to figure out what this may mean or where this is. Soon as you draw that card, if you choose to draw the card, you know immediately where to look. Or if you choose not to draw any card, because you can just pull up any chart and just put the card in its appropriate position. So essentially, the tarot is just used as an illustration for the more mathematical components, so your divination abilities can begin to move in a certain direction. Because once you identify, essentially in this case, the Seven of Wands as the Leo and the third deacon, or Leo being influenced by the planet Mars, now you have to see where those energies are in your particular chart. So for example, again, the Seven of Wands is in everyone's chart, but Mars is in a certain position and Leo is in a certain position. Leo may be the ruler of your first house, your third house, your fifth house. Leo may be anywhere in your chart, and Mars may be anywhere in your chart. So now we're going a step further as to, okay, well, how is my Mars influencing this Leo and Mars? So I have to analyze my own Mars, and I have to see what house Leo is ruling in my particular chart, or the current chart, or the transits, to give you even more analysis. So now you're looking at real-time data. So now the tarot just becomes a point for you to look at real-time data. So again, the Seven of Wands becomes Leo and Mars. So now you're looking at where Leo actually is, and you're looking at where Mars actually is, and you're bringing all these components together, and you're coming to a final conclusion based on mathematics. And again, there's no guessing, there's no speculation, there's no conjecture. You're using mathematical components, and you're utilizing equations, actual energies and essences of the universe, to come to your final conclusion. So the tarot makes an excellent aid to astrology and an excellent aid to anything occult, because everything is connected through the tarot. Because we didn't even speak about the Kabbalah. We can take this into the Tree of Life, and we can take this into the paths. And again, we don't even have to speak on all that, because that will make it even more complex. But we see there is no beginning and there is no ending, which allows us to come to our own conclusions. Because again, we have all these components, and we can pick from the components and create our own story that helps us to understand these universal equations. So utilize this plus lesson in whichever way you please. I'll get back at you soon. 93.